everybody. Welcome. You guys are the early birds. So we're going to give it just 1 minute for others to join, and then we'll kick off.
Morning.
Hi, everybody.
Awesome.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Hello,
Hi there,
everyone.
guys.
Hi,
Shawnee,
everyone.
what's the weather like on the coast there?
No, it's a beautiful day. I won't lie.
You're not on my part of the coast, then?
No, down in Belito.
Ah, lovely. Good for you.
Yeah, lovely day.
Hey, and there's Sakti from India. This timing is for you, Sakti.
I'm just getting on my video so that, can you see me now? Yes.
Yes.
Hey, Sakti.
Hey, brilliant to see you guys there.
Yeah,
Lovely.
it's great. I'm glad you made it because, as Wayne pointed out, this is your time slot. It's all for you. So, so you made it worthwhile.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And Jasm, I'm busy reading that book of yours, bud. I tell you, that last chapter made me think. Me and Zen, I've got to think about this one.
What's
That's
the title?
amazing.
You can't just do that, Wayne, and not tell us the title.
Yeah, what's the book, Wayne?
Well, why should I say? Jazz, tell us, give the guys the title of the book. This thing's written with AI.
Really? Yeah. Well, hi, everyone. It's a book about the art of starting up, the philosophy of Zen, and artificial intelligence.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, captured our imagination for sure. All right, guys. So I think we should get going. It's 2 minutes past, and so we'll have a couple of others join us in due course. But we're gonna get rolling. So welcome to NXT-9's first Coach Community Webinar, because this is a webinar, but actually, more importantly, it's the first webinar in a series of interactions we'll have as part of the NXT-9 Coach Community. So you guys form part of our early coach community. We are grateful to have you guys joining us on this journey. Our goal really is to help you build better practices that achieve your goals, practices that are more impactful, with better economics and overall which achieve your goals through NXT-9. And so you guys are on this journey to guide us and steer us as to what you need and how we can shape the product to do that. Lucinda, if you could click over to the next slide. So I'm going to introduce our agenda and myself in brief, and then let Wayne do a better job than me of introducing this community. So I'm Jason Goldberg, co-founder of NXT-9, serial entrepreneur, and spent really the last 17 years helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses. For a couple of years through funding, started a venture capital fund as part of our parent company, Edge Growth. Then working with entrepreneurs we had invested in to scale them post receiving the money, and then building a brand called 10X Entrepreneur, providing toolkits and processes for entrepreneurs to build organizations. And NXT-9 is our effort to take the best of what we've learned over the last 17 years and make it available globally to practitioners in SME ecosystems to help them level up and create more impact by applying the best tools that are out there for growing businesses. So that's me. In a moment, Wayne is going to introduce a bit more information on the coach community, and then we'll spend most of our time today actually in a discussion. And we're going to have 3 panelists we'll introduce in a short while, answering a couple of questions about how they run and build their practices and the role that NXT-9 plays in that. And then we'll open up for some questions and answers where you get to basically, share the questions on your mind, either generally about building your practice or about specifically the NXT-9 platform, NXT-9 X-Ray, and we'll have our panelists respond. So that's the agenda for today. Hopefully you're excited about what we're going to cover. So with that, Lucinda, if you could click, and Wayne, if you could share a bit more about the coach community.
Okay, so we are engaging with a hell of a lot of coaches, but so far there are 30 coaches who are on the group, and you're all now part of that WhatsApp community as well. Those 30 coaches are from 7 different countries, from South Africa, obviously, from Egypt, from India, from Kenya, Namibia, Rwanda, and there's even someone from the States. quite a diverse group, eh? And there are people on there who are veterans coaching for 27 years at the one end, and at the other end, I'm a brand new coach. Please help me. I love the tool, but I've got no clients, and I'm busy. I'm starting out on the journey. 93%. So almost all of you are business coaches. So you work holistically with businesses. You might home in on particular areas, but generally you're working on the business with the CEO. So you essentially are the ideal client for an X-ray like this, because you need to know where to focus. 57% of you are on your own. Okay. The rest have multiple coaches in the business. And that varies from, I've got a partner, there's one more, through to, at the moment, about 5 additional coaches. So again, a mix on my own or in a coaching business. Average number of clients is 9, okay? And it ranges, as I said, from 0 to people who have got upwards of 20 clients that they're working with at any one time. And most people have about 50% of their clients that they've had for more than a year. So that, and especially the established clients, established coaches at least, they've got a bunch of clients that they work with on an ongoing basis. So they're adding ongoing value to those, to those clients. And just about 90% of you are actively growing your business. And about 70% of you have a formal strategy for doing that. About 65% are actively looking for products to add to your value add. And about 1/3 are actively managing a pipeline, so are looking for customers and are managing it via a CRM. So that's a feel. And your intents with your business, they vary quite a lot. But the common denominator is we all are looking for impact, and we all are looking to be efficient with how we go about adding value for our clients. And I think I'll park it there, Jay.
Cool. It's a good intro. Thanks, Wayne. And you've seen on screen, this is really kind of a minimum viable product in a sense for the coach community, where it's made up of just these 2 components for now, which is the WhatsApp group, these monthly webinars. So we'll hold these on the last Friday of every month at 1 o'clock South African Standard Time. And then, of course, the NXT-9 platform. And you guys will steer us on the rest. So please feedback on the things that you think would add value beyond those basic pillars, and we'll process that and do the things that make sense for the coach community. All right, so click on, please, Lucinda. It's time to introduce our panelists. So there are 3 of them, and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you please to introduce yourselves with five responses. So 1, what is your name? 2, what is your company's name? 3, as a coach practice, how many clients do you have? 4thly, how many coaches do you have? And 5thly, what's your focus as a practice? Are you primarily focused on the inner game for the leadership, individual or team of your clients, or are you focused on the enterprise as an organization, or is it both of those things, or is it something else? Okay, so over to you, and in the order on screen, please. Jay, starting with you.
Thanks, Jay. My name's another Jason, Jason Krauser. My company's name is Quadrant 5, as you see on the screen. I've been working in coaching, business coaching, for the last 8 years. I have over 50 clients that I've built up over that period of time. Currently working with probably around about 15 to 20 of those. I'm a single practitioner, but I have developed a network of associates that I work with, as and when required, in order to provide me with additional capacity in order to deliver service to the clients. And my primary focus, it is both, but my primary focus is on enterprise building, with a secondary focus on the inner game of the core leadership team. Thanks, Jay.
Great, thanks, Jace. Wayne.
Yeah, I'm Wayne Hartman. H2 Business Consulting is my outfit. I went and did a count. This was an interesting exercise. First time I actually did it. I've got 22 clients that I'm currently working with, and I'm a one-man band. I've been coaching for about 5 years now. Before that, a bunch of time in corporates and in scale-ups. And I focus on both as well. Enterprise primarily, lots of CEO coaching, lots of inner game stuff too, but primarily business building.
Thanks, Wayne. Ben?
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I'm the founder and CEO of Business Game Changers. Been coaching for about 6 years full-time and for many years part-time. I have about 400 CEOs in my network that I have worked with over the last 6 years, of which 20 of them are currently on retainer programs with me. I'm predominantly the lead coach, but I have a small network of associate coaches I work with on a part-time basis, hoping to grow that to a full-time basis. I also have about 10 subject matter experts that act as fulfillment partners to assist my clients in, let's say, more technical areas that their business requires a deeper approach to. My focus is also on enterprise building and job creation and high growth scale-ups. But we all know that comes from somebody who's got their inner game together. So that's me.
Lovely. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so we're now going to have a great conversation together. Lucinda, if you could click on, please. We're going to work through 4 questions. And really the goal is to distill some insights from this group of 3 people as to how, they are scaling their coaching practice. And not everybody wants to scale the coaching practice, but most of us are on a journey somewhere and do have growth in mind at least. And so, to really keep that simple, if you're in the bottom left-hand quadrant, if you're that astronaut there right now, generally there are 2 main variables. And the one is you can have clients spending more with you each. That's on the, the horizontal axis. They become bigger clients. And the other axis is you can have more clients. And I think in a dream world, you have both of those things and you land up in the top right quadrant with customers of a higher customer lifetime value and more of those. And so how do you move from the bottom left quadrant or whichever one you are to the top right corner of this chart? And so we're going to get some insights from these 3 coaches working through the 4 questions on the left of the page. So I'm going to moderate this chat. And I'm going to start with question 1. And I'm going to give kind of the first question to you, Wayne, to start with. And Jace, you're going to get the second question to start with. And Ben, you're going to get the third question to start with. But you're all going to get to comment on all 3 questions. Generally, though, I'm going to ask that the person responding first, that you kind of give in 60 or 90 seconds, kind of a fairly realistic answer. And then the other 2, if you could just build on, rather than giving your full answer, just add particular points that you feel are really important to contribute from your own experience on that same question, then you'll give like the full answer on the question where you're the primary respondent. Okay, so let's start with question number 1, Wayne. So how do you accelerate your sales cycle and reduce your cost of acquisition in your practice?
Okay, so a little while back, I did a talk for the EO organization in Durban. And when the guy introduced me, he said, Wayne sees the big picture quickly and he has empathy. So I use that approach to build a relationship. And so I focus very quickly on the big picture. So the X-ray is part of how I do that. But also it's about building that relationship and I don't force. So what I do is I help them understand and I get them to very quickly understand how I can add help. And of course, the X-ray is the tool that comes along with me and a no pressure kind of world. So what I'm actually doing is understanding where their pain points are, providing them with a solution to it in a way that isn't forced. And I think that gets everything, because then there's trust. And when there's trust, things happen quickly.
And
so it helps if they're in trouble.
just briefly to probe, Wayne, and how does that accelerate your sales and reduce your cost of customer acquisition?
Because I'm not spending a lot of time convincing them to do it, because I'm going straight to the nub of where their pain is, and I'm offering a solution, and there's a genuine relationship there, or at least the start of one. it happens fairly quickly. That's
okay.
At least that's my
So it's
experience.
acceleration. Okay,
yeah.
Lovely. Ben and then Jace, just building on Wayne's comments here or sharing your different experience on question 1.
Yeah, so I'll comment more towards the latter part of the question, which speaks to reducing cost of client acquisition. Again, one needs to, in Afrikaans, we say, jy moet meet om te weet, or in English, you need to measure to know your current cost of client acquisition. So often what I found worked really well for me, I've got 7 support staff. So we've built a system that captured data to build ratios, you know, from number of leads to qualified ratios, to how many have I met and engaged with, to how many have I quoted and how many have I turned into purchase orders. So it doesn't help trying to reduce your cost of acquisition if you don't even know what your cost of acquisition is. And so how I do that is, again, it is trust, like Wayne said, but I think what I'm trying to do is I've built myself a little rhyme. It says ham, bam. So you might want to write that down. It stands for have a meeting and then book a meeting. So ham, bam works for me. It's have a meeting with a client, make them feel the power of advisory support. So first time, just connect with them, share your story and ask them what is it that they would love to discuss, ask good questions. And in the process, they open up and they start sharing. But then because you have shared first, you've trusted them first with your journey and your failures, particularly. Speak about your failures. Don't talk to them about your wins only. Focus on sharing the things that went wrong, because that's where they'll latch. That's where they'll connect. That's where they'll feel vulnerability. And that's what will get them over the line to feel trust. And when they feel that, you can then add a level of advisory support in the next meeting. So don't share it all initially. Make them come back, because now they've thought about what they've heard. And that actually brings down the cost of acquisition, because over time, as trust is built, speed picks up.
So trust is the big common denominator coming out here from Wayne and Ben, and a couple of ways that each of them build trust there, but trust being the root factor that you're both focusing on. Jace?
Well, let me lead from what you've just said. I mean, I sell using the tool right from the outset. So maybe the point we haven't spoken about is how to raise interest fast in what you do. So most of my lead generation is through networking. And so part of my pitch is that I use the NXT-9 tool, which is the leading tool for scaling businesses, in order to get the right results for clients fast. And I have testimonials to back that up. And so that immediately separates me for any other client who doesn't have a scientific, systematic approach to solving the client's problem. So I find that accelerates, you know, the lead generation part of the sales funnel. So that's the first thing. So then I think I'll talk about credibility. So then I get presentations fast after that. I use the tool in the presentation in order to demonstrate the power of the tool. And that builds credibility fast. And so from there, that just accelerates the step to proposal and ultimately to concluding a contract. So the two things happen is, one is it's just much faster, and the amount of time I need to commit to the sales process is just reduced. So that the double whammy of that is it's faster and it's cheaper. And then it comes to the cross-sell, is where the trust gets developed. The credibility turns to trust through delivery, and those results actually materializing.
Interesting. So trust coming out from all three of you. Interesting in different emphases, you know, with Wayne maybe being kind of more the middle ground, and Ben emphasizing on the relationship building through vulnerability, and then Jace, you emphasized really how taking a scientific approach in itself builds trust and credibility. And you use the NXT-9 to do that, the NXT-9 X-Ray. Okay, good, great, gents, thank you. I think there was some really rich and also diverse responses there. We're going to move on to the second question. And on the second one, I'm going to lead with you, Jay, and then bring in Ben and Wayne to build and complement. So the question here is, how do you maximize the impact of the limited time that you actually do get to spend with your clients?
So the time I tend to map each for the client, I tend to map each interaction that I have with them to the process that I'm taking them through in order to support them. So post them being onboarded, there's a discovery phase, and post the discovery phase, there's the delivery phase, and post the delivery phase, there's a review phase. And so each of the interactions fits inside one of these stages to which we walk together in order to solve their problems. And at each of those stages, those meetings are really built around the use of the tool. So in the discovery stage, the meeting is built around a discussion on the key findings, the key results. Where do we need to work? When we move into solution building and delivery, it's built around how do you take the recommendations into plans? And when you're in delivery, it's built around, are these plans delivering the results which take you to the next level? And review, similarly, back to, have we been successful? What's the next step? So just like with my sales approach, my entire backbone of the business procedurally and from an operating perspective is built around using the tool in every single interaction with the client.
So by tool, are you talking specifically about the X-ray feature?
Yeah, the X-ray feature. So I'm talking there about the X-ray feature. My focus is very much on the business enterprise building. So typically my reference, my utility is around the X-ray component of the NXT-9 tool.
Got it. And how does that maximize the impact of your time? Maybe just to make it explicit.
Yeah. To make it explicit, it means so we get and in the discovery phase we get to the nub of the root cause of the problem fast. And that's very impactful. When the client doesn't know what the problem is, the impact is they now know the problem, and then we get very, very fast to a plan that will solve the problem. So impact, is moving the client from not knowing to knowing. To me, helping them to solve the problem so that they are unstuck and move. And so that is how I demonstrate impact along the way. We're moving a journey from not knowing to solving.
And so it's quite a curious thing, actually, because it's not obvious. It's not obvious that the person who runs the business, CEO, wouldn't know what the problem is. So can you just comment on that? I mean, what proportion of your clients do you find actually the results of the X-ray are illuminating and they actually yield insight that matters?
Yeah, I think for the vast majority of, one of the reasons that the clients are stuck is because they don't have the knowledge and the skills that they need in order to solve the problems that they're facing at that point in their growth life cycle. And that's why they're reaching out for help. So I find that the vast majority of the time, they know what the pain feels like. They know what the symptoms are, and they might have some sense of what might be causing that, but they don't really know, how to go about what they need to focus on to solve it. And so for the most part, the X-ray is a aha moment, and post that debrief, it's obvious to them, but it wasn't beforehand.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Jace. Ben, could you contribute, and then Wayne after Ben?
Yeah, I just want to concur with Jason. I was thinking about, perhaps to summarize, having access to the life cycle stage is so important. I think that's one of the greatest benefit of the NXT-9 tool. It gives you insight into that, but it also gives you a detailed understanding of what component of the life cycle stage they're in is missing, which then is in a way a departure point for conversation. And here's the key. We really have to understand and discern the CEO or the member of the senior management team's state of mind about that. Because if it's ignorance, we've got to actually provide training. If it's awareness, but overwhelm, we've got to reduce overwhelm and give quick accelerated learning experiences so that they can get quick wins. The brain wants endorphins and serotonin, so make sure they get that fast from you. The next phase is, okay, I've got it, but my team sucks at it and they don't get to do it. Okay, so then it's a leadership issue. Then you might be aware of the life cycle stage, but you suck at your own leadership getting across that ledge. They're stuck at that. And so often you've got to then gently walk them through and make them aware of, okay, but where's the actual issue? And so listening. Have I mentioned listening? I'm not sure. Have I mentioned listening? Because the challenge for me as a coach and a loudmouth is I don't listen. I'm constantly consumed with what's in my mind and getting all this body of knowledge across the story. And then I actually miss the moment. And I think that's where Wayne is great, because he really has built in empathy and really have learned to put himself in the client's shoes and really ask questions until you can see the entire environment. And actually unpacking it like that is what the brain wants from the client's perspective, but it's also what we need to be most effective. So really go for those low-hanging fruits by first understanding it before we try and solve it.
Good contributions there. Thanks, Ben. Jace?
Would you mind if I just sort of, I think Ben's absolutely spot on. I think what I guess can come back to that life cycle stage, but I think the various component parts of the tool, what it does is together with that listening and data gathering, when you cross-reference the X-ray results, it gives you a high degree of confidence that you're working in the right area first time. And that's critical. You know, you can't afford to make a mistake with a new client. You will not get back in the door. And in fact, your reputation will be harmed. So I found that in the early days when I didn't use an X-ray, I was very anxious because I was probably 80%, 90% sure that I was working in the right area, but you can never be absolutely sure. And so I would go into, I would design the solution and implement it with a little bit of anxiety. And I found that by listening, by gathering data and cross-referencing the tool, the results of the tool, I have a much better, 99% probability that I'm going to be working on the right thing and it's going to have impact.
Great. Thank you. Jace, Wayne, I think looking forward to hearing your take on this.
Yeah, so Ben gave you part of my answer. The listen thing is absolutely critical. And my approach is simplify, okay? The guys I'm working with generally don't have money, okay? And they don't have time. So I've got to get to the answer quickly. So the X-ray helps me there, but also the diagnostic discussion that happens afterwards. So now we've got the X-ray, now we align and say, is this right? Is this right? And sometimes there are a few disconnects, but it's an educational process too. So we, just like Ben said, we understand, but then I'm looking for the shortest path from there to the outcomes that make a difference. So what I do is I've got tunnel vision there, and I say, no, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on these things. So it's the critical few that we then focus on, and I absolutely nail those things. That's basically what I do.
So some good themes coming through here. I mean, clearly trust and relationship building and is a common underpin of everything that's coming through. And then there are two aspects of how to build that trust and that credibility. And the one is empathy and, the normal, relational disciplines. And then the other is the science, bringing confidence through credibility, through the scientific approach to moving you from where you are to where you want to be as a business and as a CEO. And then in terms of maximizing impact, hearing clearly that having greater confidence that you're absolutely focused on the right things is a process. And that process is really assisted by the X-ray and then a debrief with the CEO, where it's a process including their feedback, double clicking on areas of disagreement, some education, but ultimately aligning on a small number of priority areas that are then going to get militant attention to quickly deliver quick results, and in Ben's language, deliver the kind of the endorphins and the serotonin and all that nice chemistry, so that they start to build a sense of momentum and confidence and this process being rewarding and doing its job. So, okay, good, great contributions. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move to the third question. Ben, you're going to lead. So the third question is, how do you ensure that you guide your clients to the right focus areas? And maybe if I could just expand the question verbally, if you could start with, is this, do you find this is often a need that your clients are blind to some of the important focus areas? And then, how do you lead them to the right focus areas?
So I'll answer this by actually touching on the previous point and drawing it back into this as well, because these questions really build beautifully. I think what I do that many of us do is we initially get a client to buy something small. And often where I advise you to get them to buy something small just to get into the room with you and experience advisory support is to do a psychometric test. It's relatively inexpensive. Get yourself really acquainted with the psychology. Because understanding that gives you two things. It gives you the natural strengths the client would naturally tend to be inclined to under pressure, but it also helps you to understand which areas he's going to neglect because he's under pressure. And so what that does is if you now understand those two areas, you know how to ensure that you guide the client to the right focus areas, right? So if he's winning, try to celebrate the areas where he's done well based on his design and get him to stay there, but then delegate the areas where he's not good, for example, because that's often what they struggle with. How do I delegate and elevate? How do I select these things? And they often forget about the basics of psychology, the human behind all of it, the inner game, the understanding of how do I play my A game. And often what I've learned through life, and unfortunately gotten lots of scars and gray hair in the process, is I did not know about my own inclinations and preferences and what monstrous effect that has on the business. And so creating that self-awareness, using that as a tool, then gives me a deep understanding of where this client's going to be neglecting, what areas you're going to be neglecting, and he doesn't even see it yet. So that's the wowness of what we bring. We bring that first. But then secondly, going to the diagnostic tool of the X-ray, the tool is so explicit. I mean, it literally is like open heart surgery. You can see the entire anatomy. It's called an X-ray for a reason. You can see everything. And it's actually what you need in order to then go to the areas of most importance. And there, my greatest advice to you is, again, to listen, to ask him to say, what areas do you believe is the top 3? And then ask him why. And then check that he doesn't just go to the areas he likes, right? Check that he also goes to the areas he doesn't like, because that's often where it's going to bite him in any case.
That's great. So what I'm hearing is you triangulate 3 sources of data. I'm generalizing. Maybe you don't do this every time, but generalizing, what I'm hearing is you start with something small, and a psychometric profile is super useful because it gives you insights into the human and what are likely to be some blind spots. And you then add the X-ray. So you now have got an X-ray on the individual psychologically in a way. You've got an X-ray on the organization. And then you debrief on the results of the X-ray, but you have the insight into their profile and you ask them what they think. And then you hear the response, and that's your 3rd data point. And you use these 3 data points to triangulate. And I gather through that conversation, you're also helping them see some of their own blind spots, by introducing some of the psychometric profile results, and you're debating some of their kind of, primary areas where they think are focus and where they do and don't agree with the X-ray. And then you just land up agreeing ultimately through triangulating those 3 points and through conversation. That's a great contribution. Thanks, Ben. So Jace next, and then Wayne.
So very similar to Ben, and I guess this gets nuanced based upon the client you experience, right? And so, but as an approach, in using the diagnostic X-ray, the first thing I do is to get them to understand that what Ben mentioned, that growth life cycle stage and the plot, and talk about whether they agree that they are at this point in their growth life cycle stage. So I get them to buy into the fact that growth life cycle stage is true for their business and is reflective of where they are, and that the gaps that they've got are impediments to scaling. So I get them to buy into that concept, and then look at the X-ray and the open heart surgery, and I link that. Those priority weak links to making progress in achieving the milestones that shift you up the growth life cycle. So I make that connection, and if they buy into that, which they do, because it is evidenced by the pain points that they're experiencing, then we can start working in the right areas. So that's how we start, by focusing on the right areas. From there, it's a simple matter of solving the next problem, because the X-ray actually gives you a set of sequenced steps to take in order to grow, and essentially a coaching pathway. with your client over time. And so I keep coming back to what's the next problem to solve? Is this, if we've solved this problem in this weak link, are you seeing the shift against this milestone? If so, what do we need to work on next? And so that's the way I keep the conversation focused on the next area that is critical to unlock and unconstrain in order to grow.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Jace. Wayne?
Yeah, so usually when someone gets hold of me, and by the way, I should have said up front, pretty much all of my business comes from referrals. So I'm actually not actively marketing. And you're partly to blame for that, because NXT-9 and 10X Entrepreneur are my biggest clients. But when they come along, they usually are coming along with a particular problem, and someone has said to them, listen, Wayne will help you with that. So to start with, it's a discussion of exploration. What is the problem? And what I'm thinking about is, have they accurately identified it? And if I sense they haven't, then I'm going to say to them, let's do the X-ray. Okay. Sometimes it is just plain blatantly obvious, and they are on fire and they need help with something immediately. And then I don't take the X-ray. That comes later. So then I solve that problem, and then we come back later and say, what's next? But what's interesting is when we do use the X-ray, sometimes something else pops out as a more pressing need. So, for example, I'm always wary of people who tell me my strategy is waxed. You don't need to worry about strategy. My strategy is tight. I say, oh, no, okay. Well, maybe let's test that. And what I do is I quite often give them the strategy canvas, okay? And I say, well, fill this thing out. And then I say, well, no, it's not as tight as you think it is. Let's do the X-ray, and we'll see where the gaps actually are. So it's a fit for purpose a kind of approach, and quite often it's the people stuff that is invisible. So we're talking about hardcore stuff, but there's almost always an intervention on the people side too. So lifting out what the range of things are that are sitting in front of us is important. And then in a discussion and the use of the X-ray to work out, well, in what order are we going to pull these levers? And again, the critical few.
Got it. All right. Those are great contributions. Thanks, guys. We're going to do the fourth question quite quickly, because I want to get to the audience's questions, and we've already got one posted there. For the rest of you, we're going to respond to your questions next. So you can, anytime from now, just type them in the chat box, and then we'll pick up on those after we've chatted through this fourth question, and I'll guide the process. And we're just going to go top to bottom. So if you want a high chance of your question being covered, get it in sooner, and then it'll be first in, first out. So fourth question, and we'll just kind of go back in the cycle. So Jace, you lead, then Wayne, then Ben. When and how do you approach your clients to X-ray their business? And do you encounter skepticism on, the time required and so on around the X-ray? And how do you respond to that skepticism?
So when is right at the outset, Jay, because I lead with that. It's part of my, how I do my coaching. So it's right from the outset, from the first conversation. And how do I approach it? I approach it as being critical for me being able to work well with them, and for us successfully resolving, their constraints fast. So I from the outset, I pitch it that way. So I don't tend to get much pushback on it. I also don't. I don't mark it up. I don't embed it in a solution. Because I just say I don't want there to be any reason why they wouldn't adopt it. So I say it's really reasonable, and I really recommend that's the best tool you can use, and the best tool I use that we work with. We use this tool to get it right together. So I lead that way. Where there is skepticism, there's two things. One is prior to the NXT-9 money back guarantee, I would say I'll give you your money back if it doesn't work, which tends to work. Or I might say, depending on what the problem is, just do the execution X-ray. I have a sense that, once we work on this, you're going to need to execute anyway. So let's just check that you're going to be really good at getting this implemented. And then I debrief the execution X-ray with them. And by then, they, as Wayne says, they see that there are gaps in the execution capability, and they see the power of the diagnostic power of the X-ray. And so from there, it's very unlikely that we don't do the X-ray. But if they're still resistant, what I do is I say, well, I'm going to put it into my proposal as optional. And later on, I'd like to revisit this conversation with you once we've completed the initial piece of work.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, Jace, is, basically you just put it out there as the next step in your process. That's just how you introduce it. Look, the next thing we're going to do is the X-ray, and from there we'll align on the priority areas based on those results. And you don't often encounter resistance, but when you do, you use the money back guarantee. It's the first thing to overcome resistance if it's money. Second thing, if it's time, you shrink the scope down to just one area of the X-ray, which makes it a very low time hurdle. And as a last resort, you leave it in your proposal, but as optional, and we'll do it later. And how often, like out of the 50 clients, how often have you had that scenario where you have to come back to it later?
I'd say probably about 25% of the time. I don't force. It's not our response. We're trying to build a relationship here we work together, and I'm not a consultant. I'm a coach. I'm here to support you. I'm not here to force you. So I probably about 25% of the time, Jan. I know that
really
you're going to do it. Yeah, at the appropriate time, because once, as Wayne says, once we've worked on something, they're going to know that that's not the silver bullet to unconstraining their business. There's the next thing to work on, and so there's always the next thing to work on. So at that stage, I simply say, why don't we just understand what all of the next things to work on in a sequence by doing the X-ray? Then we'll know and can pick the right one that we need to work on next. So that's my approach.
Good. Thanks, Jay. Wayne, how about you?
Yeah, unlike Jay, I don't base everything on the X-ray. I start with the problem. I suspect Jay has some clients that are a bit bigger than mine. So sometimes I'm dealing with guys who can't afford the X-ray. Okay. So my first thing is engaging with them is actually understanding. And I'm using the tool. As soon as I think, listen, this tool is needed, then I explain it to them and the value proposition of it. But I don't start out that way. I also use, last year, I had a client who absolutely needed help with strategy and everything, and they needed the X-ray. And the person who I was selling it to understood this was the sister of the founder. The two of them were key players in the business. But the brother, he didn't buy this thing so much. So I said, don't worry about it. If this thing turns out to be a mess, I just won't charge you for it. It's as simple as that. Okay. And it turned out that we didn't charge them for it, but not because the X-ray was bad, but because they didn't buy it. So remember, that was when we had the discussion about, well, if they apply it properly, then we'll give people their money back. But if they don't apply it properly, well, then we won't do that. So there's an element of diligence on their part too. And what I do is I explain that. Okay, if you actually use the tool properly and you genuinely believe this thing doesn't add value for you, well, then we'll give you money back. So that's the approach that that I take with skepticism.
Lovely, thanks, Wayne. Ben.
Okay, so I've got a few nuggets for you guys who might like it a bit more clinical. So I've got 3 ways of approaching this. The first one is the build up, then the why, and then the ask, right? So during the build up, here's what I always say to myself: features tell, but benefits sell. So I'm assuming you're going to get a constraint of cost or affordability at the end. So at the end, when I end, I actually want the guy to sit there and think, I'm actually stupid not to buy it. Like it's almost the question is not cost, but rather what will it cost me if I don't buy this insight? That's where I want them to get to. Okay, so that's where I'll end. So in other words, the ignorance is more expensive than the NXT-9 platform cost, right? That's the main issue here. So if that's the ask part, when I do the ask, that's what they must think. How do I get there? I do that by having a good build up. So you've got to give them a little bit of features. You've got to show them what it looks like, showcase the platform, tell the story or the narrative that showcases the ridiculous or crazy reality of entrepreneurship. This communicates a subtle message of failure that is highly likely. And then make them curious about why they have gaps in their business. Because obviously if they've done, you know, I always joke and say, you take off with an aeroplane and build it as you fly. I mean, that's obvious that the aeroplane isn't built. It's obvious that it's full of cracks and it's not going to make it. So that makes them worry, right? Without you creating the fear, it's almost subtly there. Then you'd make them think about, make them want to know what it is that's now missing. Because let's be honest, most entrepreneurs, when they reach us, are actually not capable of doing this. That's why they need us. So if we can help them find that, the why they buy is so that they can do something about it and reduce the risk of failure. So connecting the risk component and showing them that this is the diagnostic that helps you understand not only how much work you still need to do, but also what is prioritized, you know, conveniently for you, so that you can just chip away at that. Makes our job so much easier, but it also helps them see the quick wins that's lying embedded in it. So that makes them think, hectic, how can I not do this? This is like, I would be foolish not to go ahead with it. And that's how I overcome the, let's call it the skepticism or the pushback on cost.
That's really good, Ben. Could you help us a little bit with how you do that first part, which is just kind of helping them appreciate the high risk of failing as you scale? And you've often, you know, thrown in the term without creating fear. So how do you do that?
So I make it light. I would say something like, you know, most entrepreneurs jump out of the airplane, and then after they've jumped out of it, they build the thing whilst they're flying. I make it adventurous. I turn it into a journey, a discovery, a creative exercise, because that is what it is for them initially. They're so naive initially when it's especially if it's their first time, like most of us were. You actually get pimple and pass, you get hit into reality very fast. And often that's when they need to get to us. That's when they realize that there's some, but now they don't know. It's the science and the art. We have the science and the art, but they don't. So we have to get to the science quickly in order to use our art in dealing with that. And that's the gentle, wise, that's what time gives you in the seat. If you're a long enough coach, you get to know how to do that. Difficult to teach.
Got it. Thanks, Ben. Really good contributions, everyone. So I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to pull up there, so we do get to spend some time with our audience's questions, and we've got a couple. So thank you for everyone who's contributed. If anybody has questions not yet posted, go ahead and post them now. We've got 3 so far. I'm going to start, actually, Alistair, thank you for your question. It's more of a logistics question. And for those who haven't seen, this webinar is being recorded and will be shared. So Lucinda will make it available to you over the course of next week. Thanks for the question, Alistair. So then the 3 content-oriented questions are starting with Ahmed. Ahmed, what channels, and this is a question posed to the 3 panelists, what channels do you advise us to use to get higher spend customers? And how we define their problem, pre-engagement or post-engagement with them? Would you walk us through your journey in a scenario each, please? So Jen, so that we each do get to do that, I'll ask you to do that in about 1 minute each. Maybe start Wayne, then Ben, then Jace.
Yeah, I sense that my high spend customers come to me by accident. I actually don't go chasing them. Because I mostly work on referrals, I get what comes my way. And I seem to get a lot of guys who are short on it, but I do get higher spend customers too. And essentially, how I turn a small gig into a big one is basically through the X-ray. And now I can see there's more that needs fixing, and we agree a set of steps to fix those things. So that's how I end up with a higher spend client, but I don't actually go chasing them, and I don't have a particular channel to chase them. My channel is referrals most of the time, and that's where I get my clients from.
All right, good. Thanks, Wayne. Ben?
Yeah, so Ahmed, quickly, I think for me, what's worked really well in catching some big whales was doing public speaking events. I've got 25 years of experience being on stages, so I'm often required to go speak at places. And that's given me a broader reach and created the rapport. I think what also helps me a lot is my ecosystem. I've developed ecosystems for years. So basically, if I'm a loudmouth extrovert, so for me, it's easy to walk through a airport and various, it's really relational. I don't think LinkedIn in itself or social media is the main channel. I don't think the CEOs of big companies are on LinkedIn. I think it's got to be built on them seeing you talk. You are being profiled, you are being positioned, you are given opportunities to speak at investor events or at critical, large-scale audiences that have these people sit and experience that. I do think that's one of the best channels. I also think referrals, because referrals is ultimately the best ones you want. So between those two, I think those are the best channels for me. Yeah,
that's good. Ben, Jace, how about you?
So my customers, higher spend customers, come through networking. So actively networking in order to generate leads, but by and large through referrals at this point in time. So that's the predominant source of leads. And then, in terms of defining the problem pre-engagement, because I have a deep understanding of the methodology that underpins the diagnostic, the 8 disciplines, and how they work together and interlink, and in order to drive growth in a business, I tend at the beginning to ask a series of questions. So ask a series of sort of demographic questions, if you like, in order to mentally locate the prospective client on that business growth life cycle that Ben was talking about. Because the minute I have a sense of where they are, I've got a very good idea of what the problems are. I then ask them a set of problem-related questions, and I tend to get the symptoms. But then I've got a really, really good idea of what the root causes are, and I think that this is my diagnosis of what the problem statement here is. And if we do this, we're likely to solve it, but we will confirm that through doing the X-ray. So that's how I go about defining the problem and confirming the problem. There's never a time when there's a disconnect between the two, because of 8 years of using the methodology. In terms of post-engagement, generating customer lifetime value, if they already know that there's a journey because we've used the diagnostic, there's always the next step to take. And so that's a sales conversation. That's not a sales conversation. It's just the next piece of support conversation. So that sets that up easily. And if they haven't done the X-ray, I am constantly looking while we're executing for the other problem that they haven't solved that they need to solve. Simply by cross-referencing it to what I know are the sequence of problems that will need to be resolved at that life cycle stage, as Wayne was saying. So it's very easy to have a conversation about the additional support that they would need now if they were going to continue to scale.
That's a great point.
Comment?
Yeah, go for it, Wayne.
Yeah. So the three of us basically have a reasonably sized customer base already, and there are people in the audience who don't. So I cast my mind back to when I started. So when I started out there, I basically put the word out on LinkedIn. I shared what I was doing, and my credibility and the network and my history helped. If you don't have that, well, then you've got to rely on the people to link you up with people who have a need, and you need to be clear then about what problem you solve. And this is where this ecosystem comes in. There are already people, and one or two of them on this call, where their skill set became aware to me, and then I become aware of someone who needs those, and you can link it up. So there's a community element that can lead to business as well.
Very good. Yeah, good. So, and then I would just, with my NXT-9 founder hat on, build upon Jason Krause's comment, which is, really when you understand what we are trying to, as NXT-9, do for you as the coach, we are trying to make NXT-9 your secret weapon for sales in two ways. So Jay said, NXT-9 always has the NXT-9, the next thing to do. And that's because they've got 200 problems in their business, and it's just ranking them and saying, let's start with the first 3, but after 3, there's always number 4. and 5 and 6. And that becomes a dynamic picture. So if it's used as the backbone of your relationship, particularly your planning discussions with your client, there just always is the next scientifically derived gap to work on. That's the first way that it just makes it a much more seamless process to be selling the next engagement without actually be selling anything. Because all you're talking about is the next step that they need to take, and they may or may not need help with that. But that leads to the second thing, which we're trying to do within the platform. You know, we've worked with hundreds of scale-up entrepreneurs and their management teams over years, and what we've seen is, you know, most of the things they have to do to build their business, they've never done before. They're just building new systems, closing new gaps in their strategy, and they've never done it before. And so we, in our experience, know that most of the time they need help. Most of the time they need handholding from a coach or a specialist. And so we unashamedly build that into our action recommendations in the X-Ray. We say, this is the action you've got to take. I mean, that's a unique feature of the X-Ray. Instead of just the gap, here's what to do. Here's how to close the gap. And coming in our next release in the next 2 weeks are then recommended content and tools to execute on that action. And most of the time, the recommendation will read, and by the way, we think you'll need help with this from your coach. So speak to them about supporting you with this process step. So you almost have a technology platform that your clients, that's continuously selling your support to your clients without you being the one that's selling. And we feel perfectly ethical about that as NXT-9 because we really believe they need it. And if you know there are coaches out there who aren't the right support for the client will know that and they'll speak to someone else. And if there are bad coaches, then the client will fire them. But generally, you know, the coaches using NXT-9 are going to be good coaches, and it's the right thing for the client to get their help with the next step. So anyway, that's part of a, you know, insight for you in our philosophy on the relationship between your clients and you with NXT-9 in the pictures. If we're successful, one of the ways you'll land up with bigger clients is the clients you have will become bigger clients. They'll spend more on you because they'll get more of your help, because the X-Ray will just make it crystal clear what are the priority issues they have to tackle. It will help them with content and tools that will lead to a primed sales moment, because they'll realize, oh, I know exactly what to do and I even know the tool, but I don't know where to start. Okay, so I'm now at a point of felt need. I need help with what steps to take and how to take those steps. And I know I need help because I've even been given the content and the tools, you know, to execute on this, and I still don't know what to do. Oh, and it's telling me I might need a coach to speak to my coach to help with this step. So it's a really primed sales moment. That's not a sales moment. It's a conversation about how you can help them take this next step in building their business. And that's one of the ways you grow your smaller clients into bigger clients. Jace, you got to
yeah. So I know we're running out of time, and maybe we should have some of these questions consolidated for another conversation. But I just want to make a point here, because I think it's something that is so important, is that the reason that the CEO has come to you is because they don't know how to solve the problem they're facing right then and there. They're incapable, as Ben has said. And it's because they haven't grown themselves and their skills and capability and knowledge ahead of the business. And that doesn't change when you solve their problem. That continues to be the case because they're so busy working on scaling the business that very often they always lag the business in terms of their capabilities. And so after your initial interaction, you are not suddenly going to have faced a situation where the client is capable and doesn't need you anymore. In fact, quite the converse. As they progress, they need you even more and more. And so that's the disclaimer here, is that your client is going to want you to help them more, not less, over time. And that's puts a heavy pressure on us as coaches to grow ourselves ahead of our clients. So that's the disclaimer. Beware the success of this. You know, you have to do some heavy lifting on your own capabilities in order to enjoy the benefits of a longer customer lifetime. So I just wanted to make that point, because it might be a bit of a blind spot in the discussion.
That's great. Thanks, Jace. We've got extra questions here, and we'll answer them, but not now. We want to respect your time, and we said it's from 1 till 2. It's 2 o'clock now. So we're going to bring this webinar to a close, and we'll respond to the outstanding questions on the WhatsApp channel. So thanks everybody for making it. Thanks especially to our panelists for your invaluable insights. And so that brings to a wrap our first webinar. We hope you found it valuable, and we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar, same time and same place in a month's time. Have a great weekend, everybody.